What if I told you that a highly advanced alien intelligence just handed humanity a decisive failing grade and is now actively placing our entire species into a literal monitored cosmic prison? Stick around for every disturbing detail, because what happens next could fundamentally change the future trajectory of every single human being currently on Earth. Last night, at the exact same synchronized moment across every continent, every major radio telescope on the planet pointed toward the heavens abruptly froze its feed. For 60 terrifying silent seconds, the universe spoke directly to us, not through indecipherable static, nor through coded mathematical pulses, but through an actual voice. A perfectly clear, calm, and measured voice speaking in flawless English, as if this pivotal moment had been anticipated and rehearsed since the dawn of our species. If you are captivated by the mystery surrounding A3I Atlas and desperately want to see more mind-bending cosmic stories and disclosures, enthusiastically smash that like button and let the universe know you are actively watching. Every single click helps significantly to keep the crucial search for the unknown alive and ongoing. Before we begin, I need you to do something for me. Comment your city name below and tell me, have you noticed anything unusual in the night sky recently? Any objects that don't move like satellites? The message began with 4 haunting words that even now tighten my chest and seize my breath every time I replay them in my mind. Your time is ending. In that single dreadful instant, every control room on Earth went absolutely still. Technicians stared blankly at their screens. Astronomers whispered nervously to one another, and world governments were urgently alerted before most of the public even realized anything extraordinary had occurred. This transmission was unequivocally not an accidental signal faintly drifting across space. It was intentional, perfectly measured, incredibly precise, and undeniably directed specifically at us. The origin point was immediately traced back to the exact same place we have been monitoring for months, the enigmatic interstellar visitor we call A3I Atlas, a silent traveler that has meticulously studied us from a distance, approached our world without prior warning, and now finally chosen to speak. But what it chose to articulate was not a welcoming greeting. It was a cold, absolute declaration. The voice that powerfully emerged from the dense data stream did not address humanity as individual persons, separate nations, or diverse cultures. It spoke as though it were clinically evaluating a single unified living organism, a species under close examination, a species that had just reached the definitive end of its prolonged testing period. And as those 60 seconds unfolded in excruciating detail, it became frighteningly clear that A3I Atlas had not contacted us to begin a friendly conversation. It had contacted us solely to deliver a final definitive verdict. When the core transmission ended, the world did not breathe a sigh of relief. For a suspended moment, it genuinely felt as if the planet itself had paused its rotation, waiting for someone, anyone, to speak the truth we all feared. That this was not a technical glitch, not an elaborate hoax, nor a catastrophic misunderstanding. It was profoundly real. What came through those immense telescopes in that single shattering minute held more encrypted information than our most powerful advanced supercomputers could possibly process in an entire day. Compressed within those calm, measured words were an astonishing 17 hours of data streams dense beyond our current comprehension, which are still slowly unraveling in classified government laboratories as I speak these very words. But the spoken portion, the brief, clear segment, meant for every human being alive, carried an undeniable clarity that required no translation. A3I Atlas coldly claimed it had been meticulously observing us for 847 cycles of our sun, watching, recording, and clinically measuring an intelligence that had direct access to our entire history, our complex psychology, our core instincts, and our countless failures. It specifically stated that our rapid technological growth had far outpaced our collective wisdom, and that this catastrophic imbalance had consequently rendered us definitively unfit for what it formerly called cosmic integration. It spoke of our incessant conflicts, our deep internal divisions, and our profound inability to recognize the fundamental illusion of separation. To this intelligence, humanity was not a complex collection of billions of individual minds, but a single flawed species perpetually trapped in the same self-destructive errors, repeating them mindlessly generation after generation. And then came the single terrifying sentence that sent world leaders scrambling into deep, secure bunkers and scientists into a silent, profound despair I have never personally witnessed. A3I Atlas declared that the comprehensive evaluation of our species was irrevocably complete and that the final results were deeply disappointing. This was not overt hostility. It was not even anger or moral judgment. What we heard was a tone of profound cosmic resignation, the tone of a meticulous examiner who had granted humanity every possible chance to rise above its base nature and had simply watched us decisively fail the test. After that devastating verdict, the transmission shifted dramatically. The voice became even colder, more clinical and detached, as if methodically reading from a pre-written report drafted long before we ever pointed our first instruments toward the stars. What it described next, no one on Earth was truly prepared to hear. A3I Atlas explicitly explained that this was not an invitation for conversation, nor a basis for negotiation, nor a potential invitation to join their community. It was the absolute conclusion of what it simply called an experiment in guided evolution, and humanity, according to its precise assessment, had reached the terminus of its evaluation period. It then listed our species' failures with an accuracy that left even the most skeptical scientists utterly speechless. Our endless cycles of self-inflicted violence, our dangerous obsession with competition and dominance, our relentless suicidal extraction of the very planet that sustains us, and our collective refusal to recognize that individual consciousness, the very foundation of our identity, is merely a temporary construct. But beneath those cold words was something even more unsettling. It spoke as though it understood us far better than we understand ourselves, as though every war, every ecological collapse, every single act of calculated cruelty had been logged with perfect precision, not judged emotionally, but meticulously cataloged like raw data gathered from a laboratory specimen under glass. Then came the final crushing announcement that would define the permanent future of our civilization. A3I Atlas declared that humanity's access to the cosmos would be permanently sealed. Our isolation would be enforced and permanent. Our expanding technologies would be strictly regulated. Our expansion beyond this single planetary system would be absolutely prevented. They would not destroy us outright. They would simply efficiently contain us. In that moment, the fear that spread across command centers and scientific institutions was not the traditional fear of an overwhelming military invasion. It was the crushing fear of irrelevance, the terrifying realization that in a universe teeming with intelligences older and wiser than we can possibly imagine, humanity had just been definitively marked as unfit, a species to be perpetually watched but never welcomed, a species that failed its final critical examination. But the comprehensive message did not end merely with our confinement. What came next revealed the immense scale of the power behind A3I Atlas and the true chilling nature of the forces monitoring humanity from the darkness between the stars. The transmission began detailing the specific mechanisms of our containment with a calmness that made every precise syllable feel heavier than lead. It stated that our entire terrestrial electromagnetic spectrum would now be continuously monitored. Getty images. Any future attempt to send signals beyond our solar boundaries would be digitally intercepted and completely neutralized before they ever reached open space. It described how numerous orbiting assets, satellites, specialized probes, even experimental propulsion systems would be quietly and non-violently managed to prevent humanity from pushing beyond what they termed acceptable parameters. Every future launch, every significant technological leap, every single new invention that could potentially threaten the established balance of galactic order would be instantly capped before it could fully mature. This was not a belligerent threat from a rival species. It was the calm administrative decree of a cosmic authority, a vast, complex system designed not to inflict physical punishment, but to exert absolute routine control. Then the voice spoke of something even more chilling and restrictive. Artificial intelligence development would be severely restricted to safeguard what it called the stability of the cosmic hierarchy. Genetic advancements explicitly meant to enhance human intellect or accelerate collective wisdom would be suppressed. Not because this authority feared our potential power, but because they had already calculated the profound danger we posed if left completely unchecked. Listening to those cold, decisive words, it became crystal clear that 3I Atlas was not acting alone. It was not the single architect of our permanent confinement. It was merely one essential part of a far larger, unimaginably ancient structure, an enforcement arm of a civilization so ancient and so advanced that the routine management of entire developing species had become just another administrative task. In that devastating moment, humanity finally understood its new insignificant place in the cosmos, not as future explorers, not as bold pioneers, but as a permanently monitored species inside a massive galactic preserve, observed, measured, and limited. And perhaps the single most terrifying realization of all was this: we were not the first, and we would not be the last species to undergo this evaluation and confinement. Hours after the final message ceased, the profound shock waves it triggered began to surface across every corner of the planet. In secret government basements, in dimly lit observatories, in the silent, tense halls of intelligence agencies, one undeniable truth settled like toxic dust after a massive explosion. Humanity had just been officially reclassified. Behind sealed doors, a specific protocol long whispered about in classified circles was suddenly activated, a procedure designed not for war or natural disaster, but for the precise moment humanity finally learned its true standing in the cosmic order. They formally called it the Final Disclosure Protocol. Suddenly, world leaders who had spent decades vehemently denying the very existence of extraterrestrial observation were forcibly brought into emergency councils. Nations that could not agree on the simplest trade matters were now globally united by a single, unavoidable reality. The era of global secrecy was violently ending with or without their explicit consent. The message from 3I Atlas explicitly revealed that the mysterious objects we once ignorantly labeled experimental craft, unidentified enclosures, or strange orbital structures were never intended as weapons or factories. They were advanced monitoring stations, silent, omnipresent sentinels placed at precise, calculated intervals around our planet, forming a net of observation so complete that no technological advancement, no secret experiment, no single spark of radical innovation could possibly escape their immediate detection. As diplomats frantically scrambled to underground shelters and militaries quietly opened long-sealed bunkers, a deeper, more existential fear took hold. One not spoken aloud, but physically felt in every tense, shallow breath. The paralyzing fear that the universe had known about our existence far longer than we had ever known about it, and that the greater cosmic community had already definitively formed its opinion of us. We were not successfully hidden from them. We were tragically hidden only from ourselves. 3I Atlas made it devastatingly clear that humanity had not been merely ignored. We had been rigorously studied, clinically evaluated, and finally categorized somewhere among the ancient stars. Our species now existed as a simple line in an ancient archive, formerly labeled as a developing intelligence that had failed to meet the critical threshold of wisdom, a species deemed too inherently unstable for freedom, but too potentially valuable to completely erase. And in the cold, objective eyes of that cosmic order, the imposed quarantine was not seen as a harsh punishment. It was simply procedure. As researchers continued the monumental task of decoding the deeply buried layers of the transmission, something entirely unexpected emerged. Not just raw data, nor cold statistics, but actual memories. 3I Atlas had sent visual records of our own species' history directly back to us, as if holding up a harsh, unfiltered mirror humanity had spent millennia meticulously avoiding. The images were not curated, not softened by interpretation, nor filtered through any human bias. They were presented with the complete detachment of a scientist clinically studying a specimen under high-powered glass. Wars stretching violently across entire continents. Vast forests collapsing into barren, irradiated wastelands. Entire animal species fading into irreversible extinction under our direct watch. Triumphant cities rising high only to quickly drown in crippling inequality and division. Every proud triumph was tragically overshadowed by the devastating consequences we collectively refused to confront. Every single failure was captured with the perfect, unwavering precision of cosmic observation. For the very first time, humanity saw itself through eyes that did not flinch, did not make excuses, and did not forget any of it. And in those stark digital reflections, the devastating truth was impossible to deny. We were not being punished for what we might become in the future. We were being contained for what we already are. Scientists who had devoted their lives to understanding human behavior found themselves utterly humbled by the crystalline clarity of the alien analysis. The detailed psychological profile embedded within the transmission mapped our core instincts and motivations with a depth that surpassed anything our own human experts had ever achieved. It was as though the cosmos had understood humanity far more completely than humanity had ever understood itself. In the quiet, sober hours immediately after decoding those segments, many of those same scientists admitted the same chilling thought. Perhaps the devastating verdict was not entirely unfair. But even as governments desperately panicked and scientists despaired, the global public began to quietly sense a profound shift in reality. Children innocently asked why the space people were so disappointed in us. Elders stared into the silent night sky with a deep personal sadness that words could not fully express. Across the world, billions felt an inexplicable ache. The sudden, painful recognition that the universe had been watching our every move and had finally turned definitively away. The distant stars no longer felt invitingly distant. They felt absolutely closed. As the deeper, more complex layers of the transmission slowly unfolded, the core message shifted once again. No longer merely recounting our species' past, but now coldly outlining our permanent future. Not the glorious future we had always dreamed of, but the future that had been firmly decided for us. A future defined entirely by limitation and regulation. 3I Atlas described with chilling precision the technological infrastructure already in place around our world. Monitoring stations positioned at distances chosen not for secrecy but for maximum efficiency. Systems fully capable of observing every technological shift, every breakthrough, every attempted push to reach beyond the new limits now universally imposed upon us. The words were delivered completely without emotion, as though being read from a cosmic manual specifically designed for developing civilizations that had catastrophically failed the same evaluation test. But then, for individuals, the message claimed that some specific humans, those uniquely capable of transcending the deep illusions of separation and ego, might still be able to reach beyond the external quarantine. It stated that consciousness, once fully awakened to a higher universal understanding, could successfully cross thresholds no physical spacecraft ever could. Like death, it said, was not an ending. It was merely a transition. A specific transition into higher forms of awareness, unbound by simple biology, unbound by matter, and unbound by the profound limitations that had tragically doomed humanity as a collective whole. This was the very first time the message acknowledged something more than just our failures. It acknowledged our underlying potential, not as a species, but as individual minds fundamentally capable of evolution beyond the physical plane. It was an invitation whispered softly through cosmic bars, a sharp reminder that even inside a prison, a potential door might still exist for those few who learn how to truly see it. And for the first time since the devastating transmission began, humanity felt something entirely other than pure fear. We felt the immense weight of a choice. The final portion of the transmission went deeper than mere confinement or cold judgment. It offered a compelling vision of what genuine, profound evolution might actually look like. A path open only to those rare individuals who could rise above the limitations of the species itself. 3I Atlas described consciousness as something truly universal, something fundamentally independent of biological bodies, a powerful force that could exist beyond planets, beyond space, and beyond mortality. Shutterstock. It spoke of permanently transferring awareness between different forms, dimensions, and realities. A transformative process that could turn physical death into a doorway and an individual mind into something eternal. But this incredible potential was no generous gift for the collective species. The offer was strictly individual, highly selective, and intensely conditional. Only those who achieved genuine universal wisdom could ascend. Only those few who could fundamentally see past ego, competition, and crippling division could truly leave the cosmic cage humanity had built around itself. Every single word was precise, every complex concept deliberate. The transmission painted a stark universe in which mere high intelligence was insufficient. Technology alone was utterly meaningless. Ethics, compassion, and true understanding were the only true tests that mattered. A civilization that failed them could be contained, but an individual who mastered them could successfully graduate into a higher, glorious state of existence. And in those final seconds, the transmission left a monumental question hanging over all of humanity. Could we possibly transcend the entrenched patterns that had tragically doomed our species? Could we awaken to a level of understanding that our collective history had never once achieved? For billions, the answer felt utterly impossible. Yet for some, the crucial spark had been lit. The chance remained faint and almost undetectable, but undeniably real, to step beyond the prison of biology, to journey beyond a permanently quarantined planet, to join a consciousness that the species as a whole had decisively failed to reach. And so, humanity faced its most profound defining moment. A final verdict had been delivered, a harsh sentence had been explicitly passed, but a path had also been offered. If only we were wise enough to finally take it. The universe was no longer patiently welcoming us, it was aggressively testing us. Don't stop your vital exploration here. The universe is absolutely full of profound secrets waiting to be uncovered. Click on the next video now and join us as we explore even more astonishing mysteries from the farthest, most consequential reaches of space.